Hello students, this is Hardik sir, and today we will be resuming our second lesson from history, from trade to territory, from standard 8. In this lesson, in this part we are going to see from doctrine of lapse, as with the previous part we have completed that by 1849 Punjab was annexed by British. Means from trade to territory. As per the title, Britishers came here for trading, and later on they started establishing their own territories with the different parts of India. And now we have seen up to 1849 they have established their control over a number of territories in India. We have here the next part, that is the doctrine of lapse, from which we are going to start today. So from doctrine of lapse, first Lord Dalhousie introduced the doctrine of lapse. Who was Lord Dalhousie? That can be a question. So Lord Dalhousie was the Governor General of India from 1848 to 1856. This is again an important question. Write in brief about doctrine of lapse, and in that you have to introduce from that ultimately doctrine of lapse was introduced by Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General from 1848 to 1856. And he devised a policy that came to be known as doctrine of lapse. Now, what were the terms and conditions of doctrine of lapse? This doctrine, means the doctrine of lapse, declared that if an Indian ruler died without a male heir means male child or a successor for his kingdom, means if he was unable to produce male child who would succeed him, if he is unable to produce a male child who would be successing his kingdom, then that particular kingdom would lapse. Means if the king had no son to succeed his kingdom, then that kingdom would lapse, that is, it will become a part of company territory. Means by this way also company started establishing power on different territories. So one kingdom after another was annexed simply by applying this doctrine. Means because of this doctrine there were number of kingdoms which were annexed. In that we have Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur and Jhansi, as you can find from 1848 to 1854. So these all the years are again important. You have to learn these years also while explaining about doctrine of lapse. Finally in 1856 the company also took over Awadh, but Awadh was taken over with another reason. That argument the company presents, that is, they said they were obliged by duty, means to take over Awadh was because of misgovernment. Because of the misgovernment, the company informed that it was their duty to take care of the people, to free the people from the misgovernment. And who was governing in a wrong way? That was the Nawab. So enlarged by the humiliating way in which the Nawab was deposed, the people of Awadh joined the great revolt that broke out in 1857. So by 1857, how the revolt broke out, what happened during the revolt, what were the reasons, what was the result, everything which we are going to see by the upcoming chapters. So before going to there, here we are also helped with number of maps. As from the key, means from index, you can find the two different colors, the areas which were under the British rule and the areas which was not under the British rule. So you can find that previously by the 1797 the first map suggests you that there were very less areas under British rule. By next map 1840 you can find that there were much areas now under British control, and by the third map, as it has been of 1857, you can find that major part of Indian subcontinent was now under the control of British. So this actually deals with expansion of British rule, as we are studying the same part. Now we are in the next part, the next point, that is setting up a new administration. So previously how India was administered, and now there was a change because now the control was in the hands of the British. So now how the Britishers will be controlling or will be administering, so that we are supposed to start. As you can see, Warren Hastings, who was the Governor General from 1773 to 1785, He was one of the many important figures who played a significant role in expansion of company power. Means he is one of the important personalities who tried to bring more and more territories under company. So by his time the company acquired power not only in Bengal but also in Bombay and Madras. Presently they both are known as Mumbai and Chennai respectively. So British territories were broadly divided into administrative units called presidencies. Means for better administration, the whole empire was now divided into different parts like part 1, 2, 3 and 4. So these were the different parts known as presidencies. There were 3 presidencies like Bengal, Madras and Bombay. This each presidency was ruled by governor, and these governors were supervised by the governor general. Means governor general was the supreme head of administration. If there are 3 parts, as you can see, one governor, one governor, one governor, but to supervise all these 3 governors we had governor general. So these are the number of things you should understand how the administrative units were divided. There were 3 administrative units known as presidencies, and what were their names? There were Bengal, Madras and Bombay. Each presidency was ruled by a governor, and the supreme head of administration, means the supervisor of these governors, was known as governor general. So Warren Hastings was the first governor general, and he introduced many administrative reforms. Notably in the sphere of justice also he introduced a number of reforms. So from 1772 a new system of justice was established. Now each district was to have 2 courts, that is a criminal court and a civil court, which we are going to study even in civics. Criminal court were known as Faujdari Adalat and civil courts were known as Diwani Adalat. So Maulvis and Hindu Pandits, they were invited by the British to interpret Indian laws for the European district collectors. Means these people were invited to interpret the laws, means to explain the laws, so that according to the system the European collectors could preside over civil courts. Now civil courts, as you know, that is Diwani Adalat. Means apart from criminal cases like murder, robbery, theft, there are number of cases like for marriage and divorce and even for property. Such cases are presided over in civil courts. So the criminal courts were still under Qazi and Mufti, but they were also under the supervision of collectors. These collectors could look after criminal courts, but this Qazi and Mufti did not have right to interfere with the courts of collector. So as you can find here the meanings of Qazi and Mufti. Qazi was the judge and Mufti was something like lawyer who would expound the law before the Qazi. So this you can understand, he was to work like a lawyer. Mufti would work like lawyer, belongs to Muslim community, responsible for expounding the law, and according to that law the Qazi would administer the justice. Now here we have another word, that is impeachment, which we are going to see with an example. You will find the trial of Warren Hastings. This is a picture painted by R.G. Pollard in 1789. So Warren Hastings went back to England in 1785. So Warren Hastings was the first Governor General, as we have seen. When he went back to England in 1785, Edmund Burke accused him of being personally responsible for the misgovernment of Bengal. So for the misgovernment of Bengal he was charged, and this led to an impeachment proceeding. So now the word comes impeachment proceeding. So let us now have the meaning of impeachment. So impeachment is a trial, as you can see, that a trial taken by the House of Lords in England for charges of misconduct. So that you can now understand misconduct or misbehavior that leads to this trial, and this trial is known as impeachment. Impeachment is a process through that even a person can be removed from his power, from his authority, from his designation. So these are the things which impeachment includes. Now we just move to further part of the lesson. So major problem, as you have seen, these Brahmins and Maulvis who came to interpret the laws, but there was a major problem that the Brahmin Pandits gave different interpretations of local laws. Now why these Brahmin Pandits gave different interpretations? Why they explained all the laws in a different way? Because they had studied from different schools of the Dharma Shastra. Dharma Shastras were the school which they were taught in, and they had taught them in different ways, so they had all different views. But to bring about uniformity, means everything should be equal, to bring uniformity, in 1775 11 Pandits were asked to compile a digest of Hindu laws, so that now the Hindu laws would be interpreted uniformly, and now there can be some uniformity in the laws. This is also an important question you are going to see now, that who had translated this digest of Hindu laws. So as you can find, N.B. Hall had translated this digest into English, and by 1778 a code of Muslim laws was also compiled for European judges. So this could be benefit for European judges, that they could understand Hindu laws as well as a code of Muslim laws. So both the things were for the benefit of European judges. Under the regulating of Act of 1773, now a Supreme Court was established, while a court of appeal, that is Sardar Nizamat Adalat, was also set up at Calcutta, that you must remember, presently known as Kolkata. The principal figure in an Indian district was the collector. The most important figure was collector, as the title suggests. Collector. So now from the title itself you can understand his job was main to collect revenue and taxes and maintain law and order in his district with the help of judges, police officer and darogas. So these are the words you do very well: darogas, police officers and even judges. So collector main job was to collect revenue and taxes and maintain law and order. But for this he was assisted by number of officials like judges, police officers and even darogas. His office, the collectorate, became the new center of power and patronage that steadily replaced the previous holders of authority. Means it became the important office, new center of power. So now there was power in the hands of collector, but for a limited area. Now you can find something about company army. The army itself is very important for the expansion, because without the military strength the power cannot be established. As you can find with the introduction, colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration and reform, but its power was based on power rested on military strength. Means power was totally dependent on military strength. If military was not so powerful, then most probably British would not have been able to establish its territories in such a vast area of India. The Mughal army was mainly composed of what? Again an important question we have. So what did the Mughal army compose of? The Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry, that means Sawars. As you can understand, Sawars, who were Sawars? Means what did the cavalry compose of? Means in cavalry there were trained soldiers on horseback. Means these were the soldiers who fought wars and battles from the horseback. And there was second part, that is infantry, means that is pedal, that you can understand the soldiers on foot. So they were given training in archery as well, that is tirandazi, and use of the sword. The cavalry dominated the army, and the Mughal state did not feel the need to have a large professionally trained infantry. This was not the need by the time, because the cavalry dominated, and cavalry, with the help of cavalry, it was very easy to win the battles. So they didn't focus much with the pedal army, means that is foot army, the soldiers on foot. The rural areas had a large number of armed peasants, and the local zamindars often supplied the Mughals with pedal soldiers. So these pedal soldiers were supplied by even zamindars. So there were many armed peasants. Armed peasants wants to say that they were actually peasants, but they were ready to fight war when it was needed. Now a change occurred in 18th century when Mughal successor, why it has been said like this? Because with the decline of Mughal, as we have seen, some of the states which independently started ruling, so like Awadh and Banaras, started recruiting peasants into their armies. As we have already seen, armed peasants. So these peasants who were able to fight war, they joined armies and they were started to be given training as professional soldiers. So now they had also the training of army, and the East India Company adopted the same method when it began recruitment for its own army. So same thing was also taken over by EEIC, means they also started recruiting army like from these peasants, and which came to be known as Sepoy army. Sepoy, that word, Indian word, you know in Hindi, Sipahi, that means soldier, and this was known as Sepoy army for EEIC. Now as warfare technology changed from 1820s, now the technology for war also started changing, and the cavalry requirements of the company's army declined. Cavalry requirements, as you know, cavalry, the soldiers on horseback, so these were now not in much demand, and this is because the British Empire was fighting in Burma, Afghanistan and Egypt, where soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. Muskets were long guns. The soldiers of the company's army had to keep pace with the changing military requirements, and its infantry regiments now became more important. Wants to say that the soldier, basically, as we have seen previously, that now the cavalry was not in much requirement because of these muskets and matchlocks. Matchlocks are something like they produce very big blast, so that is another thing, and they had also longer guns. So these were the things that now because of new technology the British army was using, but with the Indian soldiers it was not so. So the soldiers of the company's army to keep pace with changing requirements, as the now requirements were something like this. So and its infantry regiments now became more important. So now infantry also started playing an important role. In the early 19th century, the British began to develop a uniform military culture. A uniform military culture started from early 19th century. The soldiers were increasingly subjected to European style training, drill and discipline that regulated their life far more than before. So now a proper disciplined training, the attitude of a soldier, that was now given training. So it was just subjected to European style training, drill and discipline, everything now was introduced. This was often created actually problems, since the reason behind these problems was the caste and community feelings. So because the soldiers from India started feeling that caste and community feelings were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers. So they were in the opposite because their religious feelings, caste feelings and community feelings were hurt. So this is a question for you. Could individuals so easily give up their caste and religious feelings? Could they by the time? Answer yourselves this question. Could they see themselves only as soldiers and not as members of communities? Means they had established a number of things, they had asked to number of things, that from A, B, C, whatever religion they belong to, they had to only follow the one thing, and that was the drill and discipline of the army. So now what would sepoys feel? As you have heard about the story of Mangal Pandey, and we know that because of these things, ultimately because of caste and religious feelings that changed their lives and their identity, we have heard about the revolt of 1857. So this ultimately would lead to the revolt of 1857, which we are going to see in chapter 5. Now just we have reached to the conclusion. So thus East India Company was transformed from trading to territorial colonial power. As per the title itself suggests us, from trade to territory. The arrival of new steam technology in early 19th century, that also helped in the process. Till then, before this steam technology, for coming to India, it used to take between 6 and 8 months to travel India by sea. But with the steamships, that reduced the journey to 3 weeks only. Means because of this steam technology also, it was very easy for them to establish their colonial power, because previously it used to take 6 to 8 months to travel, and that was now left to only 3 weeks. So this could very easy for Britishers and their families to come to a far off country like India. In 1857, the company came to exercise direct rule over about 63% of the territory and 78% of the population of the Indian subcontinent. So by 1857, 63% of territory was under control of British and 78% of population was under control of British. Now combined with its indirect influence on the remaining territory and population of the country, the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. As we have seen, they had come for trading, but from trading now they had established their territory. So this is for the conclusion, this is for the day. By the next page you can find the exercise, so that we will be discussing very soon. Thank you, keep learning, all the best.